Hey YouTube, so I'm back with another video, and today I'm going to do a video on Here Comes Here Comes the Sun by Nicole Dennis Benn. This is her first book published, and it's really good, just in general, but definitely really good for a first novel. And so how I'm going to do this review, I'm going to say some general things first about what I think about it, and then I'll get to a point where I'll let people who don't want to hear any spoilers have a chance to click out of the video, and I'll bring up some things that were interesting to me or that I have questions about. So yes, Here Comes the Sun. So it's set in Riverbank, Jamaica, and it's about a family of three women, a mother and two daughters, and the mother Dolores and the oldest daughter Margaret, who's about 30. They are looking forward to the youngest sister Thandi, who's about 15 in the novel. They're looking forward to her becoming like a doctor or a lawyer because she's a smart sister, apparently. And the book is based off that. That's like the center theme, and then you find out about their family history and the certain things Dolores and Margaret have gone through to try and just live, because they live in poverty, but also to further and pay for Thandi's education and whatnot. And so yes, you should definitely read this book. I would give it like 4.75 stars, and only because the last chapter, I was a little bit disappointed in the last chapter, and it might have been because I wanted the story to keep going. Like, it was such a good story that it didn't get boring. The pace was a good pace. It took me a few days to read it just because I mainly read this at work and didn't read it too much at home. But I mean, the storyline is it's like a linear storyline, but things keep happening where it just keeps the story going, and none of it seems out of place either. It all kind of, by the end, it makes sense for why Dolores, Margaret, and Thandi are doing what they're doing. It really gives you an interesting perspective on the travel aspect of Jamaica. Like, the words are evading me, like the hotel industry and the resort industry. There you go. The resort industry in Jamaica, because they live in a place where there's a resort nearby, and that has a lot to do with their lives. And Margaret works at the hotel, so how that intertwines with her personal life. And just, there's also, I guess, if you need a trigger warning, there is discussion of rape in this novel, and abuse. It's not too much. It's not overly used. It's not where it's you might think the author just used it kind of to sell a book or something like that. Basically, it's necessary for the plot. Oh, and of course, I'm missing a big point. So in the story, Margaret she doesn't necessarily come out as a lesbian, but her love interest in the book is a woman. And she struggles with that. And what I think Nicole Dennis Benn did was a really good kind of example of how homosexuality in Jamaica is dealt with. At first, I was a little uncomfortable with it because some of the ways some of the scenes in here when dealing with people who prescribe as homosexual are I thought it was a little bit too much, just because I thought it might be a harsh depiction of the people of Jamaica. But after speaking to some people of Jamaican descent and telling them about this book, and some of them already knowing about this book, They didn't say it was too harsh at all. Of course, some people probably don't like it, but I mean, they described it as like a fair depiction of certain how homosexuality is dealt with in certain parts of Jamaica. Um, yeah, so will I read this again? Absolutely. I wanted to read it right after I finished it. Um, this is definitely a book I recommend you read. If you're interested in reading about the Caribbean, this is definitely a good book. And it almost kind of makes me feel guilty for wanting to visit Jamaica when they're talking about um, what happens when people want to come in and build resorts to the people in the cities who, have to eventually move their homes and stuff. Very unfair. Um, but yes, definitely get Here Comes the Sun. I'm excited for Nicole Dennis Ben to come out with something else. Let me know how you feel about it. If you're not going to watch the spoilery part of this video, just leave it down in the comments. So now I will talk about certain aspects of the novel that I really enjoyed or have questions about. Okay, so the depiction of Dolores and the way she kind of lets money rule her. So them being in poverty, I think what I'm trying to say is it really, Dennis Ben really had a good way of showing how people in poverty sometimes are, manipulated by the power of money, right? So Dolores ended up selling Margaret when she was about 14 years old to this tourist, for like $600. And, of course people would think, of course at first she's like, no, but he kept pulling out $100 bills and it made her do this. And which is so terrible. But the thing is, this man knew that this woman selling trinkets needed money. She's not going to be out there sweating just for selling trinkets for the hell of it. And he used that to his advantage. I mean, it's not specifically said in there, but people, when you're being manipulated by a dollar, when people keep raising the price on something, you say it's not for sale. Like she said, her daughter's not for sale, but he kept pulling out 100 American dollar bills till it was like $600, and she let him have her daughter for a night, which was terrible. But it just kind of this cyclical cycle, and then how Margaret just kind of gets into prostitution and kind of normalizes this idea of selling herself, and starts selling other women on the island, and young girls at that. They are definitely, not all of them are definitely of age. Dennis Ben made a point to talk about when Margaret was first sold, and Sweetness. That Sweetness was Thandy's classmate. So yeah, so she was about 15 at the same time prostituting and being a part of the prostitution ring. And Dolores, just as like, I want to say Dolores is just this awful character, because then again, they explain Thandy's father, and the reason he stayed around is because he wanted to, he wanted Margaret. He was interested in Margaret, who was also still a child. And when she refused him, he left. And Dolores only wanted to keep him around because, yes, he was attractive, but like she said, he paid the bills, he kept food in the house, and she didn't have to struggle as much. So I really appreciated Dennis Ben for kind of pointing those things out, how the lack of money makes people, do things that you normally wouldn't do, especially if you came from a privileged background, or you would, it's still a horrible act, but to be that desperate for, just for comfort. She wasn't asking for, she wasn't she wasn't asking for luxury items. She just wanted stability. And she suffered, and that made her daughter suffer. She took it on them. And also, yeah, let's talk about the how this idea of men leaving these women in shock. So Charles's mother, I forget her name. I want to say it's Miss Grace, but correct me if you've read this book already. Charles's mother, like going into shock after his father left them. And she, they had to like bathe her, and she wouldn't like really leave her house or her room. And Dolores' mother, so Margaret and Thandy's grandmother, you know, she only stayed in her rocking chair after her son, which was Dolores' brother, went to America. And he got to America, by stealing Dolores' money that she sold Margaret for, which was also just like, oh my gosh, so terrible. Like it was just, it's not it wasn't a happy story, but it was a good story. And I was also intrigued the fact that Dolores and Margaret were so invested in Thandy's smarts, but Thandy wasn't. She was more concerned with bleaching her skin. And by the end, she left and ran off with Charles, so she left her whole private school education behind, even though Margaret, was prostituting to, help pay for that tuition. And that's how Thandy got in, was the guy Alfonso's check. What else? Oh, yes. Verdine and Margaret. Yeah. And it also, that's another thing, Margaret's selfishness when it came to money too. This idea that her and Verdine, of course she wanted to help Verdine by getting her out of the neighborhood, and they could, live their life and have their relationship in peace, finally. And people knew Verdine was attracted to women, had been run out of town before, and they pretty much tried to run her out of town again. How that her selfishness bit her in the ass at the end, because Verdine found out she was lying about the resort and selling her her house, which was dear to her because it was her mother's. And so now Margaret is alone. Dolores was alone too. I mean, Thandy ran off with Charles, and Margaret got her villa, but yet she was alone still. I'm still trying to put my thoughts around this book. Other than that, it was really great. And those were just some of the things I was left to think about. I'm really interested in what you guys had to say about what I said. If there was other thinking points or interesting points that I didn't mention that you had questions or wanted to comment about, or you were interested in my thoughts, just leave a comment below, and I'm so happy to talk and answer and discuss this book, because I'm still not really over this book, and I'm not going to read it again anytime soon. So what better than to talk about it and discuss it. Okay, so next time I'll see you guys when I have another review or another video to make.